Morning or
How's
good
everything
afternoon.
rolling? Look at Cam. I like those pictures of you guys yesterday at the event. It looked like it was a great event.
I thought Pat and Mitch absolutely killed it. We had the thing filled up. They were like barely able to get in the doors. We had to bring in chairs. It was great. Great event.
Awesome. That's really cool. What was
Opinion?
what was the theme of that event?
So Mitch went over his business plan and building a great foundation, which was super valuable. And I went through what we have done as a team across the country to kind of pivot with the market on going towards more expireds, more terminated, that kind of things. And then I also did exactly what we're saying. I kind of gave out our basic scripts that can get people really going quickly. So it was all about being outbound prospecting, creating business, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. That's awesome. Um, and I think that's a great topic for right now that people need. The market's starting to heat up, and all the markets that I've connecting with a lot of the agents around the United States, especially the high-end luxury agents, they all told me that the last couple of weeks have really kind of done a 360 in some ways. So it's heating up, definitely. I think a lot of people are moving asset classes around and looking at how they can do 1031s or take money out of the stock market that they made and diversify into real estate. Because I think people are getting a little nervous. They're like, it can't just keep going forever. And I need to be prepared and diversified and,
Well,
park
also,
in things that it
it is true,
doesn't.
exactly. And the stock market's all-time high right now again, right? We're seeing
I
that.
know.
We're also seeing all the folks that, in the last year, we had a big dip. There was a pretty big dip in the stock market. So we had a lot of folks that went, oh, my net worth, because it's all sitting in stocks, went from whatever it was and went to half. Well, we couldn't buy
Right.
that home in Florida, or we couldn't buy that home in San Diego. They aren't able to do that. So I completely understand why people are starting to move again. Interest rates did come down; they popped back up here a couple days ago, but they're fluctuating, and it's a great time, at least in our area down here in Southwest Florida, to start building your listing inventory because there is a lot of people that are selling and they're moving to a different area because they can again. So it's a great market if you're working it. Absolutely.
Well, and I think, you got to they're going to control the spigot when it comes to rates and mortgages. And I even read an article the other day on how the banks are really tightening up on values that they're giving houses, which means that they're really going to look at all the appraisals and so forth, right? Because the banks get nervous and they usually see what's coming down the line before the public does or anybody else. And they're going to be super conservative moving forward. So you're going to see a lot of places, even though there's hype and a lot of people trying to buy it, doesn't mean that it's going to appraise. So I think you got to get people prepared on that too. Not only the sellers, but the buyers. That's coming down the line, 100%. Look at, we got all right. So we're filling in now. Randy's there. Brian's here. We got Ross the boss on. Matt, I'm not bragging. I'm just applying for a job, Battiato. We got Karina here. We have everybody here. Cam's here. Mitch is here. He's just playing his lead in guitar, and we got it rolling. So let's get rolling on this topic here. And I think our topic is setting expectations for sellers in a ever-changing market. And I think it's a really important topic that all of us are going to come across right now because we're coming up to, I like to call the Super Bowl of real estate, which usually starts around mid-February, runs all the way to mid-June. And that's usually the biggest market of the year. So you're going to see a lot of people move. And especially if those rates can get back, 6.5 or under, I think a lot of people are going to stop waiting and they're going to start living. So Cam, let's start out with you because you're coming out of your big HUT conference yesterday with a ton of people. What are you sharing with your sellers and how are you setting expectations on what they can expect, not only on the market and the financing side, but what buyer's psychology is, what pricing should be, and where these markets are going right now?
All right, so a lot of questions there, Pete, but we'll try to get through them. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's busy this week and having a great week, being productive. Seller psychology right now. Before we get into that, I want to break down us as agents, our psychology on it, because this is really important, especially in downward trending markets or flat markets. I'm honest, here in Southwest Florida, we are in a downward trending market. Month after month, we're seeing prices decrease. Very similar to the market that I first became a realtor in 2008. That's literally what I cut my teeth on. And what I have found in my personal business, and you guys might be able to relate, but being honest with sellers is very challenging in a downward trending market. They always want what it was worth 6 months ago. That's just the psychology of all sellers. They want as much as possible. But us as agents, we know that if they price it at that point, or they price it in fantasy land, they are actually going to end up losing more and more money because they are going to be chasing after a downward trending market, right? So us as agents, we have this dilemma. Do we want to take a listing that we honestly know at this point won't sell and it's a downward trending market? Or do we want to be completely honest with the person, as we all should be, but even maybe overly honest and really, forcing or pushing the fact that this home needs to be priced aggressively to sell in this market? That is a challenge for agents as depending on how busy we are, right? If you got 25 listings or 30 listings, you got 6 offers coming in, you're doing the business. It's much easier to go to a seller and be 100% upfront, 100% honest on the price that it's going to sell at today, not the fantasy land or the hope and dream price that they're hoping to get. Now, if you're like most agents and you're carrying 1 to 3 listings, and that's going to be 30% of your quarter revenue, that is when the challenge comes in, that we start doing things as agents, in this case, taking an overpriced listing that we truly know won't sell, because we are hoping and praying and dreaming that for our business, that will benefit us. So we lose focus on what we need to be doing. And that's how I always, refocus this, is you need to be always looking out for the seller's best interest. If that means that you're going to them, it all starts obviously up front when your first listing presentation, when you first give them the price that you think it's going to sell at. In a downward trending market, you need to explain to them that, if we aren't able to get this home sold in the next 20 or 30 days, you are going to be losing out on, and use the statistics. You have to know your analytics in your market and explain that to them in a way that they understand. Also, of course, when you're speaking to a seller in these terms, always make sure you ask if they understand or if that makes sense. Every conversation when we're doing analytics and kind of breaking stuff down, especially with your older clients, make sure they're following with you, because I've had times that you explain to them that they're going to lose 15 grand if they don't have it sold, and they shake their head, and then you say, well, if it was 3 months, how much would that be? And they like they don't even realize that what you were talking about. So make sure you're very upfront, you're honest, and you really explain the details of what they will be losing by pricing this home incorrectly. But it first comes down to our own business. You need to be doing the things in your business to keep yourself at a point where you're busy, you're not desperate for a commission check. And that is, I think, a key for most agents that are either on a team or they're solo agents, newer agents possibly, but they start getting desperate, which then they start taking listings they shouldn't. So my kind of advice right now for everyone is be more aggressive, always be honest, always be looking out for the seller. And if that means you don't get 110% of your listings, one thing a lot of agents brag about is, oh, I get every listing I go on. That's great. I mean, if that's what you want to do, but I would rather get every listing that sells for my business rather than just telling every listing. You also then will avoid the next call, which is obviously kind of displeasure or upset that they're not getting their home sold, what's going on, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I wanted to leave you guys with, is make sure you're focusing on your business, do your activities so that you have the amount of listings, you have the amount of clientele, that you're not desperate for that one specific listing. And that'll allow you to conversate with them and really be honest and upfront and with the number it's going to sell at, rather than trying to just get the listing. Make sense, everyone?
Awesome. So here's my follow-up question, Cam. How do you set the right pricing expectations with those sellers right off the bat when all they're hearing is there's a lack of inventory and they can ask whatever they want and they'll get 20 offers in the first 15 minutes?
So first off, we never do that on the phone. We always want to obviously do that in person. and I'm analytical. I actually bring out either the paper form, or these days I'm all on iPad, and I will walk them through the market statistics and the market analytics with me if the pricing is our hang up, right? So if we go through the presentation and we go, are you ready to hire me? And they go, yes, but we want more money for it, then we will go through them. I will compare with them the what's active, what's selling, and really break it down with them in short terms. These cannot be stuff that's past really December, because the market has shifted a little bit, and you need to be accurate with your data on them. So to answer your question, I'm analytical. Bring out my iPad. I'll sit down with in front of them, even if they're an 85-year-old lady, and I go through it extremely slow. I think that's one of the biggest keys for helping them understand is you got to go through it just snail pace. Remember, they've never seen this stuff, so everything is new to them. Go through it with them, and at the end of it, it's up to them. Obviously, it's always their choice where they want to price their home. It's up to us, though, if we want to be the agent to represent an overpriced home. Make sense?
Love it. Great answers. Let's go over to Karina. Karina in Space Coast, Florida. How are you setting expectations with your sellers right now in this type of market where we all feel the market ramping up and heating up? How are you approaching that? So share with everybody what you're doing.
Okay, so when I'm at the table with the sellers and we're talking price, I let them know that a lot of our houses are selling still 30 to 60 days, but a bigger chunk of our houses are sitting 90 days plus. And so when we look at that, we don't know who has the golden egg, whose house is going to sell first. Obviously, I'm aggressive. I'm going to do everything in my powers to get their house sold as quickly as possible, but I don't have the crystal ball. And if I did, I probably would not be selling real estate. I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere. So we get through that part of it. And then we talk about, all the opportunities I bring to them with my AI background and my, I'm a marketer first. So they know they've already seen all the marketing, but I still don't know if they're going to sell right away. And if they don't, very much like what Cam said, what that is going to cost them by price reductions and reductions and reductions. So if they're not willing to upgrade their house or fix, take away a red wall that nobody wants anymore, then we've already talked about the price of what that's going to take to sell that house now the way it is. And even then we may have to come down versus someone who goes in and fixes the Karina to-do list, and then we get a better chance of getting a higher number. But even that may not be the right number, because I can only go back 30 to maybe 45 days on our closed properties to get a really good idea of what their house is actually realistically going to sell at. And when we look at that, and then we look at the difference between what's under contract now and their prices, we really have a better opportunity of pricing them in a better situation. And also, I usually recommend that they come down a little bit more than what someone's going under contract now with, because we are in a kind of a slowly sliding down trend right now where we're at. We're still the Space Coast, so we still have a lot of people coming in for work, and they're putting rockets up multiple times a week. So we have that in our favor, and we're Florida, but at the same time, the market definitely has gone down a little bit, but we also have the interest rates that have also gone down for us. I have a lender now that just told me they can get 5.9% on a conventional. So that's kind of helping. I'm using some of that to market too. So you have to kind of work with your lenders and your title people to see what else you can kind of like sweeten the pot with to help attract more people to those listings. But ultimately, you have to speak up with your clients. If you don't talk to them about it, you're going to have a nightmare on your hands.
How do you set expectations on the buyer psychology right now? Because a lot of buyers are nervous on the market, and I can see that they're getting very picky with investigations, inspections, and so forth. And a lot of them are getting really kind of, I don't want to say schizo, but they're hot on the property 1 second and then they completely go cold. So how do you pre-frame that to your sellers so you set the right expectations there?
Right. So I do tell the sellers, I do also work with buyers. So I'm hearing what the buyer trends are going on, which makes me a better listing agent. And the buyers are incredibly picky right now, especially when the interest rates started going up. They did not want to do anything to a house. So a seller would say to me, hey, I'm just gonna leave it for the next buyer to take care of. I'll be like, well, that's gonna cost you maybe $300,000-400,000 on your house. So let's rethink that idea, because nobody wants to take care of your problems. They want to come in a house at that price and that interest rate and have it drop your bags, move in ready. So that's the start of the conversation. The other part of the conversation is that they don't want to pay last year's prices. They don't even want to pay 6 months ago's prices, right? So we have to be strategic. One of the ways in the last down market, I used this strategy because there was so much new construction around us, but I would go into a listing and I would always say, listen, you have to stand apart from all the other listings. Let's offer a home warranty and put it in the first words in the narrative. And that sold a lot of homes for me because it takes the Murphy's Law out of the equation. And it also helps compete a little bit with the new construction, because new construction comes with warranties. So if they're looking at a new construction versus a 15 or 20 or 30-year-old house, I don't think we have anything older in our county that we knock them all down if they're older than that. But it definitely gives us a little bit of an edge. And I have attracted a lot of buyers over the years into my listings for that very thing. If they have a pool, I tell them pay for the pool equipment too, because we're Florida, things get beat on the sun from the sun, and they go bad or sooner than my New Jersey pool equipment would have. So I know that that's very important for buyers. The more you can offer a buyer. I had one of my agents I brought into EXP. He's an excellent agent. He's definitely an icon agent, and he contacted me last year and said, Karina, none of my listings are selling. What should I do? And I said, so I told him to do the home warranty. And I also told him, start talking to your seller about getting an additional credit for your buyers to either put towards a closing cost reduction or a point buy down reduction. And I said, don't get in the weeds with trying to figure out what that percentage was going to be. Just give a flat dollar amount. And it actually helped him move several homes. And so I've given that advice to a lot of people.
So just show of hands, how many people are having their sellers do inspections before even going on the market, going live? Okay, that's interesting.
I used to, but I'm not right now.
Why?
I don't have a specific reason, because the market's heated up, and in our area, our listings we're sitting for 6 months, and now they're back to like 30 to 45 days, but I don't have a specific reason.
Okay. I want to put you on the spot. Go back to applying your sunscreen. Let's go over to Ross for a second, but I think Karina wanted to say one other thing. Go ahead, Karina.
So I can do a kind of a visual. I walk through the house with the clients. I actually like to do that with them because I'm bonding with them at the same time. But aside from me, I don't go up on ladders. I don't do roofs or attics. But we kind of look around as we're going through. So I have an idea of what we're going to be up against. But the minute I have an inspection done and my sellers decide they're not going to fix 90% of the things, now I have to disclose it. And I don't want that. I'd rather take it and do the negotiating on the fly and bring everybody together. In our state, we have Florida, we have an as-is contract versus a sales contract. My preference, I'll only accept the as-is contract, but I explain to both sides all the time. If we have a buyer that wants your house, we are going to figure out what we have to do to keep them in the deal so we can negotiate. But so for that reason, I would rather negotiate. And negotiating items back and forth is not a problem. If the roof has to get replaced because we can't get insurance, the roof has to get replaced, right? But maybe the seller doesn't, I know that the seller doesn't have money to replace a roof. So we may have to go work something out where the buyer kicks in half, or we're finding a roofing company that might accept the payment at closing from the title company. So that's, sometimes you have to, not everybody has enough money to fix everything they have when they go to sell a house. So you also have to remember that. Even in some of my luxury houses, I have found that they lost their shirt on something, and now we have to be strategic. So you have to keep that in mind and be sensitive to that as well.
I think that's great advice. All right, let's go over to Ross the boss. He's out in the desert, you guys. He's dealing with a lot of online leads and Zillow Flex and people all over the place. How are you pre-framing to your sellers right now and setting expectations on the market and where the market's trending?
So I love all this, and it goes case by case, especially when it comes to, are we going to offer a credit up front? If the house is dialed and new and we know it's going to be a short repair list, let's offer that credit up front, see if we can generate some more action. If we know that we're going into a house where there are going to be repair requests, let's not offer that credit up front. Let's take that in the negotiating realm. So I love how you guys are talking about it, but I like to do it case by case and just knowing the product, knowing my clientele, and kind of tailoring that process. But when it comes to setting expectations for sellers, the biggest thing we're dealing with in the desert here is a frozen market. We have a market with very low inventory, which should mean, like you guys were talking about earlier, ton of offers on each listing, going over the ask price. But with inflation, the rates, it's kind of turned that simple math on its head, and we're having to really set those expectations. So after those expectations are set, how important is it now with properties sitting 90, 120 days to get that year-long listing agreement? So something my team and I are focusing on is getting a length to that listing agreement, because maybe we're going to have to schedule a series of price reductions if the seller isn't willing to come down to a reasonable price point at first. It's just all about setting the expectations to meet that seller's needs. And it does kind of go by a per case basis. And we do a lot of luxury here and a lot of second home buyers. This is a vacation market, kind of like everybody on the coasts are. So our buyers don't have to buy. This is like their third or fourth home. And they just like, I can imagine their conversation at the kitchen table, like, honey, should we just go out and buy another $3 million house today? Or should we make it a $6 million New York? So anyways, it's an interesting dynamic where you're dealing with people. They don't have to spend a ton of money, but they have the ability to. So when you're in that space, it's all about just creating the opportunity and then working with the buyer and seller side to find a solution to get the property rolled, because most everybody is sitting on equity. It's just a matter of what people are willing to take. And then another thing that I'm doing to set strong expectations, like you guys have mentioned, you can't really look at the past solds as hard data any longer, because we are in an ever-changing market. So what I'm doing is pulling past solds and then pulling all the actives, and you're going to find that the actives probably outweigh the solds. And then you can kind of paint a picture for days on market, compare the price points, and then you can really use those actives as your leverage to roll that price point down and get that aggressive price point at first. Because if we're rolling on hard data, then it's like, well, show me the solds. And they're like, well, what you're telling me that I need to list for 15% less than what this house sold for. And then it's, well, here's what your neighbor's doing. Here's what the guy across the street is doing. And then we have firm leverage to show we need to look good on the market. And do you want to wait 100, 120, a year to sell your house, or do you really want to move it and reach your goals? So setting expectations has just become seeing what's out there instead of what's closed, explaining the market, and then just understanding the temperature of who the buyers are.
Okay, no, that's great info, because I think there's a lot of people on this call who are in some markets that have second and third home buyers. And, we've seen that market kind of fall off. And a lot of those people, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ross, they're pretty indifferent. It's either, hey, we found this and on the inspections and the investigations, and we want this amount of money as a credit, or we want them all of them repaired, or we're just not going to move forward. And they're very matter of fact. That's what I see. So you have to be really good at keeping it moving, right? Keeping it moving and communicating.
I mean, the rich stay rich is because they don't spend unnecessary money. So if the numbers don't work out, especially in my market where it's such a short-term rental market, everyone's looking to stay there for like a week out of the year and then pull an ROI for the rest of the year. So if a huge obstacle comes out and inspections, or if the rate isn't what they anticipated, even though they're probably all cash buyers, but even then, if something pops up that's an anomaly to them, which we know is market standard because they're probably coming out from out of market, you really got to find solutions. And it is a two-way street with the listing agent and the buyer's agent to kind of make something work. So it is good to have experience on your side when you're dealing with those kind of people.
Yeah, and I think the buyer mentality right now on that, and you have to really be clear and upfront to the sellers, is, like Scott just said, they would like to have it, but they don't need to have it, right? So a lot of these buyers in secondary markets, it's not a need. It's more of, hey, it would be nice if we had it, but we don't need it. It's not
Pure
going to
luxury.
alter our that much, right?
Exactly.
That's it. That's a big thing. No, that's great input. Let's go to Gail, my sister from another mister. There she is, Gail DeMarco, coming in hot. She's straight out of India. She's dealing in 2 markets, in Florida and in Sacramento, and she's dealing with luxury in those places. Gail, how are you guys setting expectations with your sellers right now, especially in multiple markets? Because I know every market is unique. How are you setting those expectations?
Well, right now, I've got a good little nugget to share because in Florida, we have a ton of new construction. So what I'm finding here, and it's a huge relocation area. I live in St. Johns County, St. Augustine, right? And what I'm finding is my resales are competing with the new construction, right? So when you're meeting with, I just came from a listing appointment this morning and then last night, right? All in the same block. And, you know, Toll Brothers houses, but they're like 900. And that is, you know, kind of like a luxury price point here, to be honest, right? In St. John's, you know, if it's not a custom home. So I figured, you know what, because I'm new, I'm doing like double the homework. If you put me in California, it's like I can kind of walk in and I can get a gut feeling and tell people I'm kind of like the Long Island medium, leave me alone. I'm going to get, the spirits are going to talk to me and I can give you a price. And I'm pretty right on the money with that, right? Here, I don't know shit because I've only been here, honestly, maybe 6 months really trying to dive in. So I went into the Toll Brothers community and I acted like I was a buyer. Show me your incentives. And at the end of the day, I sat there for 4 hours. I ended up buying a house, right? Because they had a cash deal and they had another one, and I'm moving my mom into it, right? But here's the thing I found out, right? She's moving out February 22nd. I'm so excited. But no, I love my mother, but wow. So what I discovered is what they post the prices. So I got the new inventory sheet. He goes, oh, don't look at that. So here's the reduced price. And he goes, all right, you know, there's 2 prices. I give me both. I said, tell me if it's a cash buyer. I said, I got cash, or is it going to be financed? Well, guess what? Even if they post this house sold for $750,000, they just tell you, I got $40,000 off being a cash buyer. Just bring 710. Bring 710, right? And we're going to landscape the whole backyard. I mean, they were throwing so many crazy incentives. And if you're, you know, a finance buyer, they're going to give you $30,000, $40,000 in upgrades. So I'm sitting in front of the seller this morning and she's like, well, you know, somebody's going to really love this house because they won't have to put the pavers. They won't have to put in, you know, I have upgraded cabinets. I have this, I have that. And honestly, she was going off what the price sold. I go, that's not really what it sold for because I actually bought the one that's on that list. I said, and that's not what I paid for it. Here's what I paid for it. She almost dropped dead. She was like, what? So that's a big thing. So if you have new construction in your area and you're competing with the resales in that area, go to the sales house. I'm going to be hitting 4 other builders, seeing if I can put in an offer. I'm not buying another house because I only have one mother, but I'm going to find out what is the real price, what are the real upgrades, because they don't really tell you till you sit at the bargaining table. So that's, you know, that's what I plan to do on Super Bowl Sunday when everybody's bored at the homes. My husband will be watching the 49ers. And I'm going to go to 3 more because I have 3 more listing appointments coming up. But I've taken 4 listings since I came home from India. And these are all from, you know what I teach, Middleton, right? I'm a prospector. And my mailers from Real Marketing. I mean, it is starting to happen. And here's the question I always get. Right. And so here, this woman wanted to come on. She wanted to come on like, I don't know, 800,000. Guess what? When I showed her the price, that was the reality check right there. I go, they're throwing money at the buyers walking in. I said, so you are competing and they could not only do what you have in your house, but they can actually get a lower interest rate and they can actually put some money in their pocket. So what do you want to do? So that really like was a big wake up call for me. So then the question I always get, hey, well, what if you represent the buyer? I'm like, you know what? You're divorced. This woman's divorced. I said, would you use your husband's divorce attorney? And she's like, what do you mean? I said, it's kind of the same thing. I said, you want me to fight for you, right? Do I double in? I actually don't double in. I don't want the double, I don't want liability. I said, but I got a great buyer's agent. She says, well, my other person, he was an appraiser and did it for 4%. I go, you know what? Don't worry about what you're paying me. Worry about what I'm gonna net you. I'm a freaking pit bull. Let me go get your money. If a buyer comes and they want to give you 20,000 over and give you 3 months rent back and they want to meet all your terms and you want me to write it up, I'll do it. I said, sure, instead of me doing 6%, I'll go ahead and do it for 4.5. But at the end of the day, my best interest is you. So those are my 2 nuggets coming fresh off a listing. It's like,
I like
Is it-
that. No, that's
Oh, it
great
is
stuff.
good.
And what Gail failed to tell everyone, she's now giving a bottle of oxygen with every listing she takes, right? An oxygen mask and the oxygen to keep everybody alive. Next, she's going to get the
it
paddles
depends. I give
ready,
a
right?
box. It depends, depending on who they are.
Pens too. She's got her whole car packed with all this stuff. So that's great stuff. Great stories. And I think, look, you got to have that brutally honest conversation because they have prices set in their mind, you guys, because they're 6 to 12 months behind. And when you're competing with new construction and yours is existing, people want the new deal. They want the house that nobody's lived in. They want to design it themselves. They want to get all the upgrades. That's a big, big thing. So you have to be out in front of that. Otherwise, you'll just sit there and get lost in the mix.
And like
That's a
Ross
big
said,
thing.
you go by past souls, but when you're dealing with new construction, those are fake numbers. They want to keep the numbers up for the appraiser. So they're just telling you bring less money to close. So you're dealing with fake numbers in any kind of communities that are new construction.
Well, because they have to hit their quotas and they're going to push it and they're going to get creative and they're going to do whatever you want. So always ask what the incentive packages are and tell your buyers, sign them in. Don't just send them there, sign them in, and then start saying, what incentive packages do you have? How can I help you with those? I can get you more incentives.
And to be honest, like the day that I went to sign after I realized, oh shit, I think I'm gonna buy this. They said, what time you come? I go, you know what? I'm not really sure about this. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, I don't know. That number doesn't look right. What do you mean? We just gave you almost 4. I go, I need another 10. Oh, I can't do that. They call me back an hour later. We could do it. Just come this afternoon.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're negotiable. They are because, here's what they said to me, because I became friends with a guy. He goes, Gail, here's what we're afraid of. Right now in Florida, we have 40% of this market, new construction. He goes, we are so worried. Toll Brothers just had a huge big meeting about what's going to happen when all this pent up, resales come back on the market. I mean, in California, we're only 24% of the market. So they are scared. They're nervous. They're trying to push. They don't care if they lose money, he said. We don't care. We got to move it. So, that's good information for us and our sellers, and then the other question is, when's the best time to come on? Right now. It's a beauty competition. Come on now, right? Before everybody else gets, because I do think it's going to be a different year. Happily.
Oh, big time. I think you're dead on. And there a lot of people worried about saturation. We could hit saturation pretty quickly, especially if the rate does drop. I mean, my feeling is below 5.5. I think that's the magic number.
Yep.
And I think you'll see a lot of people making moves. They did poll a ton of buyers who bought in, I think it was COVID times. And I think the poll was 78% of them aren't happy with their house anymore and want to move, right? I think we talked about that before. So just think about that. Think how quickly the inventory could grow, and is the demand going to be able to sustain with the supply? That's the big thing. You have to have the supply and demand talk.
One quick thing, Pete, these 4 listings I've just taken, they have all bought within the last year. You know what happened? These people got caught in these interest rates. So I've got one guy at 7.5%, right? Because they didn't want to lose 80,000, 100,000 in upgrades. So they were in there, and now they're like, look, I'm not going to make a $7,000 a month payment. One wife now, she just got pregnant. So that's the untapped. I was telling Real Marketing, take out anybody who's bought in the last 2 years. And guess what? That was a mistake, because the 4 people I got.
Back in.
Yeah. So.
People.
Yeah.
You guys, they put $6 trillion in our economy and it's all spent. It's done. It's gone. It's not coming back. So how are these people going to make these payments? It's not where they're going to miraculously get a HELOC that saves their life. So you're going to see a lot of people having to sell, just like Gail said. That was great advice. You need to know the absorption rates in your local markets, even in your hyper local areas. What are absorption rates? I'm going to leave that to Mitch, because Mitch understands what absorption rates are, and that's why he's cuckoo for Cocoa Beach. So Mitchie, talk to me about Cocoa Beach. I know you're cuckoo for Cocoa Beach, but
Yes.
how would you explain absorption rates to your sellers and anybody thinking of selling right now?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. And by the way, we have I Dream of Jeannie Way here, which is the best street in the world. It's not very long. It only goes to the beach, but it's awesome. Captain Nelson's there occasionally to say hi. Anyway, so yeah, so absorption rates. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. I'll get to that in a second because I want to talk about a few other things real quick that are on my list here that I wrote down. The biggest thing I think with our customers, our sellers in particular, is them understanding, we don't know the future. Like they all seem to think that we have these crystal balls, and
Right.
I can tell you exactly what's going. I have this woman who wants to list right now. I literally get a text from her every other week. When should I list? When should I list? I said now. And 2 weeks later, when should I list? When should I list? I said now. And I go, the answer is not going to change because it's the same answer. So I have a couple of things that I do that I think are really important because pricing is the problem right now. Neighbors sold the house 6 months ago, really 10% higher than they are now. Right, market has definitely shifted a little bit, and it's always about what's your time frame? When do you want to sell by? Do you want to sell now? Do you want to sell in 3 months? Do you want to sell in whatever it might be? So I talk about chasing the market down a lot. So talking about absorption rates, we had a 10-day a year ago. We had a 10-day on the market, of selling homes. Now we're up to 3.5 months on the market. Right, we're seeing 3 and 4 months all the time, unless they're priced correctly. Because we're a little bit different here in the Space Coast because we have the Space Center. We have a lot of they're calling us the next Silicon Valley. A lot of people moving to the area. A lot of people coming from California. Thanks, Matt, for sending all your people here. And to Florida and from New York. So I don't think we have any New Yorkers on here, but keep sending them down. It's all good. But I think it's really important to set expectations with your buyers, your sellers, and I do it on a regular basis. And if I can't get them to budge on it, I take them out to look at property. And this is a great strategy that I've done many, many times. Is I take them out to look at homes at the price they want to be at. So you want X amount of dollars for your house. Let's go look at homes in that price range. And I'll sit there and go, is this kitchen better than your kitchen? Yeah. Is this pool area, backyard better than your area? They're like, yeah. I go, so why do you think this house is 300 square feet bigger than your house, right? Yeah. I go, so why do you think that your house is worth what they got for the house? And almost always that gets them down. And because they also going on Zillow, right? And I think it's really important when you go to a listing appointment that you look at Zillow, because that's the dollar figure they're going to think their house is worth. Almost always. And it also knows if you know the number's higher, you're going to win the listing. Like I've gone on several listing appointments where the Zillow price was 10% below what the market was. And I always say, what do you think your house should sell for? I have to know where they have to go up or down, right? And they tell me, and I know it's a Zillow number, so I'm already prepared. And then I talked to them about that, and we're able to get them, more money. But in a lot of cases, they're overpriced. I use my area for instance. I'm on the water, but right down the street from me is not on the water. So my house on Zillow is $100,000 less than the market value because the home's not on the water. They don't take that into account. It's not that sophisticated in their systems. So I think setting your expectations is huge. I think getting in there and showing them examples, and don't just show pictures because every picture on the internet looks beautiful, right? You actually literally take them to the house and say, "Is your house better?" I did one of these a few months ago. I literally took them to 5 houses, and I made them take notes on every single house and compare to your house. Is the kitchen better? Yes or no? Is the bathrooms better? Yes or no? Is the yard better? Yes or no? Everything, and it really works really well. Now, and Janet made a comment there about them being on it, about their house being ugly. It doesn't matter. If you're not honest, it's not going to work. Right? You have to be honest. You have to really have the hard conversations. It took me a lot of years to figure that out, by the way. I mean, I was always, well, we could probably do it, blah, blah. And you know what happens? A month later, they're yelling at you, "Oh, is my house selling? You told me I'd get this." If you give them a number that's way above market value and you say, well, I'll list it, they don't think you're that stupid that you would list something you can't sell. So even though you told them it was worth more or worth less, you took the listing. So therefore, you're putting all this money into it. They don't say, well, Mitch is going to take this listing. I know he's a smart guy, so he wouldn't take the listing if he doesn't think he could sell it. Don't take overpriced listings. I mean, a little bit. I'm good for 5% over, but anything more than that, especially in this market, if they're not listed correctly, they're going to be in the market for a long time. So
Yep.
that's my stuff.
I think that's super important in guys, we got to go back to work. And just Jana had the best line. Jana Caudell had the best line. She said, look, you invited me to your house. I'm really flattered that you invited me here. From a scale of 1 to 10, how honest do you want me to be with you? They always say 10. So then you can say, look, I'm not buying your listing. I'm not going to give you a price that I don't think is attainable. And if you're concerned, here's all the data. Let's go see these. If we can't get in them, let's at least drive by them or walk around them. They'll think like we're casing the joint, but at least you can see it firsthand and then put your socks in the buyer's shoes. I'm not saying your shoes, in the buyer's shoes. What do you think is going to attract a buyer and attract a certain price? And you have to walk them through that. We have to put in these extra efforts right now because all the sellers are delusional. They think they're the only game in town. And what I was trying to get Mitchie to talk about was absorption rate. You have to look at what is the absorption rate in the areas? How many listings have hit the market in the last 30 days? How many have sold? And you divide them. That gives you an idea of the absorption rate. And then there's different statistics. If the absorption rate is under 2 months, it's typically a seller's market. If it's 2.5 to 4 months, it's a neutral market. If it's 4 to 6 months, it's a buyer's market. And I think we're all trending towards a buyer's market. It may shift if they can get the rate down or if no hidden inventory comes on or certain demands, but it's all hyper local. You really have to get good at showing absorption rates in real numbers in real time, because that really shows you where the market's trending, what's happening. Let's go over to Brian Yarber. He's back from the wilderness. He was at a river run through it fishing. He's back on dry land. Brian, what have you done in the past to really get a realistic price on a listing and bring people to reality? What have you done?
I've tried a lot of things. And like Ross, he said, case by case. It's going to depend on the house a lot of times, how long they've owned the house, where they're going. I want to know all those things before I go in there. But most importantly, my advice lately is, what would I do knowing what I know about the market? If I don't give them that type of wisdom of the market we're in right now. So if you're going to be a seller approaching a market like today, my goal is to educate the seller on what's going on from a satellite view. And so you said the absorption rate. So which is really cool is I did a satellite view of San Diego the other day for my team, just to do a kind of what's the market showing. And the trend that was very identifiable to me is the average cost per square foot value of every home on the market in general, everything that was pending and everything that was selling. And what I noticed in the trend is that the homes that were pending had a lower average cost per square foot value than the solds, which means we're trending in a decline, because everything that's pending does not sell at or above full price. There's going to be a trend that the average cost per square foot value in the area or the zip code or the neighborhood is trending in a very identifiable area. So cost per square foot on the actives were much higher, and that market time was trending up. So that was really easy for me to see. So when I go in and meet with a seller, I can show them, look, right now, everything in your area that is pending, I've called some of the pending agents and I know they're not selling above full price. So we're looking at a market that in your area where you are, that's going to go down a little bit. So let's really look at your house and how it compares to the market, right? So that's one thing. But the most important question, and I started to talk about this last week and I didn't get to really tell you why, which was I have not found a better question to ask any seller to tell me, like, before I get into how we're going to list and market, I'm going to, my commercial, will you do me a favor and take me back to your home when you were a buyer? Explain to me why you bought this house. How was it presented to the market? And if it was 2 years ago or 20 years ago, they recall. And what they're going to tell you are a lot of things that they enjoyed and did not enjoy about, like, if it was hard to get into, if it was overpriced, if it was in bad condition, if it was in great condition, if they bought it at an open house, whatever they tell you are clues to how to speak to them about how do they want to enter the market. Because if their experience with buying the house was amazing, then of course they want the buyer who's buying their house to have the same amazing experience. What made it amazing? And there's clues in this. So if there wasn't a lockbox, or if there was a lockbox, if there was an open house, if there was open houses, it wasn't hard to get into. Was the seller difficult? Did they give a credit? I learned so much about the seller as a buyer that if I put them in the buyer position in today's market, how would they actually approach their own home if they were a buyer? Would they like to know, as an example, Pete, your question earlier, the home inspection? I would do a home inspection on my own house. I wouldn't disclose it if I'm not a licensed agent. I would just want to know what a buyer's going to find out about my house before I actually list it, so I can fix all the things and have an understanding of what's that buyer, and that, do I want to have a termite clearance up front because I know it's going to be a negative? Do I want to know what's going to hold me back? What are they going to find? And be fully prepared for credits, be fully, for all the things that we're talking about. I would want to know those things. And I always recommend to my sellers, hey, listen, before we get your house on the market, what are the things that that a buyer's going to find today? Because it is going, I see flippers, right? We work with a lot of investors, and Randy's going to get into this. When an investor flips a property, you know what they do? At the very end, they do a punch list walkthrough. They have this whole scope of work they've done on the property, and they think it's perfect. And then the buyer comes in and hires a home inspector and finds out all these things that are wrong that the investor actually just covered up. And now all of a sudden, I've seen flippers give larger credits to a buyer just to get the property off their books because they have hard money, gap money interest rates that they're paying. And so these are things that the flipper should have known, the investor should have known. Do you know that a new home sales, like Gail's talking about, she's going to do a walkthrough, and there's going to be a punch list, and there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be fixed that the buyer finds. I'd like to know those if I'm a seller. Now, you don't have to disclose those up front. You really want to disclose on your transfer disclosure statement. Here's all the things I recently did. Those are things that I just recently did. And those are things that you want to be able to support why your value is your value. Again, these are seller consultations. So I like to prepare my sellers. Like, listen, you're entering into a market where buyers right now are asking for credits because interest rates are out of whack. So if your house looks really good, they're going to come in at or above full price because they want a credit to buy down the interest rate. That's going to be predictable. But if your house isn't in great condition and the buyer is coming in and they are paying high interest rates for a loan, they're going to want everything fixed. Are you prepared for that? And so I'm going to have these consultations up front, so I know what kind of seller mindset I'm working with. Because if I'm overpriced and it's not up to par and it's going to need a lot of work and they're not willing and they just are hard, do I want that listing? Or do I want a seller that I've just told them, hey, listen, this is predictable. And when it happens, I just want you to know that I brought this up. We're talking about it now, and just be prepared that that's the kind of mindset the buyers are going to have. So going back to the original, I think you can't ask a better question in today's market than, hey, take me back to that day you bought this house. Why'd you buy it? What was it about this house? How was your experience as a buyer? And then listen to the mindset of the person you're talking with and to see if they're reasonable or not. That's really the goal here. That's all I got.
Love it. Love it, Brian. That's great, great stuff. What a great question. Good open-ended question. Takes them back in time. Another question that I want to share with all you guys, before you even get into Brian's question, the first question that I started asking people is, I say, have you ever been through a listing interview? And what did you like about it and what didn't you like about it? Because everybody is always, especially nowadays, interviewing other agents. So you want it, not a listing presentation, not a listing appointment, a listing interview. Elevate those words, and they're going to tell you before you even start what they liked and what they didn't like. I didn't like that the guy told me he was an ABR and a CRS and a top 1%, and all he did was brag about himself, and I felt like it wasn't about me or my house or my situation. I didn't like that this person showed up 5 minutes late and they had no marketing with them or anything. So they're going to allow you to understand their mindset and what they want to hear, what their hot buttons are. And that's real easy. Just go to those hot buttons and ask that question that Brian just asked. Take me back to when you bought this. What was important? What were the features that really stood out? What did you advance since then? What do you think of the hot buttons? What do you think somebody else is going to be looking for? And then ask him this question: what's more important to you? Time or price? Because a lot of people will come in and that's where you'll see their motivation. I don't care if I sell it in the next 6 months or 12 months, but I need to get this price. And then you understand where they're coming from. Because a lot of us will sit there and say, well, you need to get this sold and here's why, and this is the price you should be at. Well, he may not care to get it sold right away. Maybe he's 1031ing somewhere else and he hasn't identified anything. So the more time is a little bit better. But he does want to get maximum money. You have to have that whole conversation discussion. Let's go over to the Z-Man at the Investor Agent Nation, otherwise known as the IAN or otherwise known as Ian. So Randy, talk to me on how you are pre-framing or preparing sellers on the investor side to price their houses when they know what it was like when they bought it a year or two ago while they were going through permitting and what the market was like. And now the market has changed. How do you bring them up to speed?
Yeah. Cool. Before I get in there, Gail, I know you're gonna, when you get that punch list back, you're gonna negotiate another $10,000 or walk away, and you're gonna.
I've actually already. So, you hear me? I've actually already been in there, and I'm like circling everything, and of course.
And then,
So,
and then I want to
no, it's
piggyback
not fair.
on what.
right.
What's
At the end of the day, I'm always going to be fair, but I'm going to be fine. Like I'm finding stuff right now that my husband's like, don't say a word. We'll replace this. Just let them do their punch list. But you're absolutely right. But again, when I bought this new house, I wasn't that guy that, had blue tape everywhere, right? I really feel like I got like a stupid deal.
I think,
So-
you're just understanding your position. You have leverage, so why not use it?
Yeah, 100%.
I was gonna also say something about Ross. What Ross was saying about looking at actives, and that's really good. And I also like to add to look at pendings, right? And I would actually sit there in a listing appointment and say, hey, by the way, Mr. Seller, I called these agents on these pendings, and not everybody's gonna tell me the price. But if I ask the right questions, I'll get very close. Some will actually tell me if especially if I know them. So here's where this pending is at. Here's where this pending is at. What do you think? Where is the market heading based on this information? And that will tell you the story. Even because some actives, some people are delusional, right? They're listed so high, and then I find out the seller is going to use that, and you're like, well, but look down the street, they just listed their property, and it's 40,000 more than what I'm even asking. So then I'm like, I have to explain how delusional those people are. And then I'm like, well, let's focus on pendings. That's going to be our sold comm in the next 2 weeks. And I actually called them and I found out for you, right? So anyway, so just add to what Ross was saying. But when it comes to investors, so I haven't heard really anybody do this, and I've actually done this with traditional sellers too. I started with investors because what happens when you start working with investors, some of them might decide to keep the property when they realize they might have to lose $50,000, and then they start doing the numbers and like, you know what, I'm just going to keep this thing as a short-term rental and ride this out and see what happens, right? So I'd rather take a $500 or $1,000 loss per month over the next 5 years if I have to, instead of giving up 50K right now today, right? So knowing this is the mindset of an investor, I upfront discuss that, and if I see that they are already thinking about that, right? And I asked them, like, you need to be honest with me. What's your bottom line? What's your break even number? Like, I need to know that, right? Tell me, and I'm not going to disclose that to anybody, but please tell me so I understand your psychology, because I get it. I've been an investor for many times, right? And I still am in many ways. When I sell land and things of that nature, I said, if you're telling me that you're going to lose money if we go and list at this price, well, then the chances are that you might end up keeping the property. Is that fair to say? Yes, I'm already thinking about exploring that option. Great. Well, I would love to know that. Maybe I can even help you with some of that. So that's a whole nother conversation. But what I'm really getting at in a conversation, say, look, the good news is that I'm very flexible with my investor clients, because I've been one, I've lost money on deals, and I hate to see investors lose, right? So if you decide to take the property off the market, which you very might want to, then just all I ask is reimburse me for my marketing. That's it. Just reimburse me for my hard costs. I'm going to give you my itemized list of all the marketing that I'm going to be doing for you and the estimated cost that it is. And I always tell them, usually it's about $1,000 for an average home, $750 to $1,000. I was like, here's what I'm planning on doing. Are you okay with that plan? And most investors are going to be absolutely okay. I've never had an investor say, no, there's no way, you're a realtor, you should. Like, well, guess what? If you hire a realtor, and I'm honest with them, most realtors will tell you what you want to hear because they just want the listing. But do you really think they're going to spend any money of their marketing dollar knowing they have an overpriced listing right now, knowing that you might actually not even sell the property if you don't get a X amount of an offer? And they already know that that's way too high. They're not going to do anything. They're going to put a sign in front and they're going to pound their chest. Oh, I'm going to get some calls and maybe do an open house and try to get more business of it. But the reality is they're not promoting your property, right? That's just the truth, because they're losing money. It's like throwing money in a shredder, right? So instead, I want to come off as, look, I want to do everything that I'm going to tell you I'm going to do in my marketing plan, as long as I know that you're going to reimburse me if you take the property off the market. And then it's done. Like they sign, they totally see that I'm on their team, right? And that I'm going to go all out with my marketing. And I've actually just did it last year with a traditional seller who was iffy, like, oh, same thing. The downtown condo in a high rise. Oh, well, if I don't get my number, I'm not going to sell. I'm like, all right, well, here's what I want to introduce. I've did this with investors, and he signed the listing agreement with that quote that if he cancels, he'll reimburse me up to $1,000 for my marketing. So it works with investors and traditional. But I started it, of course, with my investor community, and works amazing. And last, I finish on reports. I send, like, I know eXp has an amazing luxury department now with all the beautiful reports. I've had that, and Pete, you've seen mine. I've had that for years, and my clients, traditional and investors, receive a marketing report every single Monday. It looks very beautiful, right? It's very high-end looking. And in there is all the feedback from open houses. I have 9 questions that every open house agent has to answer, right? I have all the showing feedback all in one document. So when I have a seller that's sitting on a market, all I have to do is like, here, take a look at this report on Monday. It's going to come and hit your inbox between 5 and 6 p.m. Let's get on a call on Tuesday and let's decide what do we want to do next. And that report just speaks to them. I don't have to talk about price reductions. They bring it up. Because all of the information is delivered not by Randy, but all the realtors and all the buyers that walk through the property. And that's the position I want to take. Like, look, it ain't me. I'm not your bad guy. It's the market, right? Look, let's read. What did you see the report? And then it becomes easy to have those price reduction conversation that many of us are talking about in those slower markets. And I got one more nugget. Can I get one more? So
we got 30 seconds. Go.
Okay, so I just listed an investor, what we call a prehab. He didn't want to do a full rehab. He just cleaned it up, added a vanity. And I was like, look, man, we got to come out with an aggressive price. So the way I approached that, I was like, look, if this property was fully rehab, the ARV on this property is about $825. Are we in agreement on that? Yes. Okay, so how much would a retail buyer have to spend to bring it up to that level from where you're putting this market up? Oh, it's about 100,000 retail. I could do it for 70 or 80. Great. So where do you think that should land us as an as-is value? Well, 825 minus 100, 725 maybe. All right, so then let's list it below that and let's get massive activity, right? So we listed that thing at 675. We got 20 offers right now in this market, slower market, 20 offers, and we bid them up. 3 of the top 20 came up to 750, and I'll end up that.
Wow. Listen, that's why he's the powerful Polish sensation. He's coming in hot at the end. I love it. Listen, great one, you guys. Everybody, thank you for contributing. That's what we're all about. If you were invited to this mastermind, thank the person who invited you and invite other people next week. We'll be slinging out more great tips, and we'll see you guys next week. Happy hunting this weekend. See you soon.
Later.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
See ya.